is the money that's going to go into this cake. So this is exactly how it comes out when you bring it out from the cake. Hello guys, so today we're going to be learning how to decorate a celebration cake from the scratch, right from the trimming to the layering to the crumb coating to the final covering. And of course I'll be showing you how I achieve my stable whipped cream. No, I have a video of that already, but I'll be showing you how I color my stable whipped cream in black, being a very strong color, the do's and don'ts and the tricks involved. And also there will be some other techniques I'll be showing you in the course of the video, so you all want to come along with me as I show you how I achieve all of this. What you're going to be needing is, first off, any quantity of stable whipped cream that you must have portioned for the cake you're going to be decorating. Now this is about 350 grams. So basically I don't measure out the quantity of whatever I use for this recipe, because basically you're going to be adding cocoa powder into this. You're not going to be whipping it in, you're going to be folding it in, because the speed that is going to go in with the stand mixer is going to be too fast. You're just going to fold this in with a hand mixer, as you're going to see me do anyway. I'm going to be illustrating, so that you don't overwork your stable whipped cream, which is already been stabilized whilst whipping. And then you're going to be adding, of course, the black color. Now I avoid using oil-based colors or liquid colors because of the fact that they don't easily give you the color and the vibe that you want. So what I do is to make sure that I use the dark powdered color. There are a whole lot of brands out there, but this brand here is one of many brands I use. What is most important is make sure it's a black powdered color and you're using a good product of cocoa powder. So what I'm going to just do basically is to throw it all in. All right, I'm going to be throwing all of this in. As you can see, I'm not measuring it out, but I'm making sure that the reason why I'm adding the cocoa powder, first of all, is to also aid the stability even a lot better, because you know this is another dry ingredient going in. That's one. And the second reason is because you now have like a slight hint of a chocolatey taste in your whipped cream, to reduce, or rather to totally take out that aftertaste that some black whipped cream taste normally have. So you'd use your cocoa powder to kill or to get rid of any of such taste that might seem a bit off when you're done covering your cake. So I'm doing that now, and as you can see, me barely folding it in, it is really very stable. Now for you to do this, just know that your whipped cream has to be very stable, because that is actually like the foundation that you need to achieve anything you want in the world of whipped cream. So I'm folding all of this in now. I'm going to be okay. So at this point we have something like a light chocolate brown colored whipped cream. You can see that it is not all thoroughly folded in. That's because I'm leaving room for the fact that I'm going to be adding the powdered color. Now to add the powdered color, I don't like to pour it all in, because sometimes some of them have some bit of air trapped in and you don't want any lumps in your smooth whipped cream. So I just pour like this, depending on the volume of your whipped cream anyways. Like I said, this is 350 grams of stable whipped cream. So if you're going to eyeball this quantity of black I've added into it, it's going to be about 3 teaspoons of black powdered color. Now the reason why I'm making this ahead of time is because it is very typical of dark or strong colors to have to mature over time. Now we're going to be trimming the cake from the scratch. As you can see the cake samples here, we're going to be trimming the cake from the scratch, from coating it, before we now finally cover up with black. So that's enough time for this cream that I have prepared to actually extract the intensity of the black color I want it to have, especially when I don't want to add up too much black color so that it doesn't have an aftertaste. So I just add the right amount or the right quantity into it. It comes off first off as dark gray, as you see it coming up now, and at the time you leave it to rest, just pop it into your refrigerator or into the freezer for about 30 minutes, and by the time you bring it out, you will be amazed to see that you have a really dark shade of whipped cream, still stable and still being able to retain its shape even whilst you're working with it. So I'm almost done folding all of it now. And I'm sure from the video you all can tell that it is very stable, because look at it, holds its shape very nicely. But I'm not done, I'm almost done. So this is going to measure up about the 2nd teaspoon, because what I added first was just about 1 teaspoon, even though I poured it in, but I've been able to eyeball it over time to know how much quantity that is most likely is. So now I'm just trying to cover up. Okay, so at this point I'm done mixing in the black powder color into the cream, and this is exactly what it looks like. Now, not to worry, this is not the intensity of black I need. Despite the fact that I would like it to be a little bit darker than this in the intensity of the black, I know that by the time I pop this into the refrigerator for about 30 minutes whilst I trim the cakes and crumb coat the cakes with a white whipped cream, I will be back in at the maximum 1 hour to be able to use this, and it would have the perfect shade of black I want on my cake. So I'm just going to be throwing this in the fridge, and then we'll go on with the video to show you how I trim my cakes and fill them up very nicely. Okay, so I'll be working with a 6 inches size of cake in 3 layers and 3 flavors: vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate cake. I will be placing the vanilla at the bottom, and that's because it has the most structure rather than the other 2 flavors, and the fact that I need it for some support. There are times that I always put the vanilla at the center, and that is if I'm working with the red velvet flavor. When I'm working with red velvet flavor, it is very nice, but it also holds its shape pretty much nicely, and I can put that at the bottom side so that the vanilla can be like a perfect contrast from the red velvet to the chocolate, which are the 3 typical flavors that most people order: red velvet, chocolate, and vanilla. But for the purpose of this video, we are having vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. So at this point now, this is a 10 inches round shape pan, and sitting on it is the 6 inches. It's going to go a little bit smaller after trimming, because I actually want it to be about 5.5 inches in total dimension by circumference. So what I do is, for every time I want to layer a cake, I don't work with the smooth surface of the cake like this, and that is just because I always believe that there is this slippery feel that it has that can allow your cream to slip off by the sides, especially when in transit, because this is just a 3 layers cake and I cannot possibly start doweling this. It's really so small, but you have to put into consideration that even if you're in transit and it's just a 2-layered cake and it has not a perfect structure inside of it, it's going to still slip out. So very quickly, I'm working with the tray to reduce the mess that I'm going to create from the trimming. So everything I trim goes straight into the tray rather than me having to like clean everywhere. So this is what the first layer looks like. And so at this point, I'll be using my stable whipped cream already. What I did was whip up a batch of whipped cream, and then I took out the one I was going to use for the second coating and colored it as we all saw. And this is the remaining bit, which I'm going to be using to layer the cake. So it goes in like this. There are a lot of techniques and you know, styles that bakers adopt in layering the cakes, but this right here is the style that I am most comfortable and convenient with. All I do is just spread it in a back and forth motion, more like I'm spreading butter or margarine on a slice of bread. That's what I'm doing now, and I will be doing that to just level it out, making sure that every side of that surface is all balanced out. And I would go ahead to add fillings, because I most oftentimes add fillings to my cake. Now, adding fillings to your cake is going to be a variation of your creative mind, or in the case whereby your clients request a particular flavor, there you have it. But for me, this client gave me a free hand, so I'm going to be working with the relatable fillings that would go with each flavor. So for my vanilla, I most typically always use salted caramel. So this is salted caramel. So I'm just going to be putting a dollop of this into it, as you see, and then take out the excess. And after doing that, just because I know that this is wet and I don't want to stand the risk of the cake slipping, the same thing I was trying to avoid whilst I trimmed this, I will then go ahead to add up some crushed fillings. This comes as an added cost really, but most of my clients always understand this and they're willing to go with it. So this is the second filling that goes in. For every layer of filling I put on my cakes, it always like a 2 mix of the smooth and the textured ones. So this already somewhat protects the sticky texture of the cake. And then after doing this, I just go ahead, right, to just slap on a little bit more cream to seal that in and to give a perfect friction for the second layer that is coming in, like, so that it's not going to be a cake directly on the filling. So we're going to have another cake going on, definitely. So this is going to be like the perfect sandwich, sealing in the first filling and then sandwiching the other one perfectly. We're working with the strawberry flavor next. So what I'm going to be doing very briefly is just to trim out the bottom sides before I place it on the second layer. So try to do that here as well. Okay, so that's what we have here. This is going to be a very interesting class. I only hope that you all are going to stay to the very end, because if you stay, trust me when I tell you that you're going to be learning loads of new techniques that you probably have seen, but maybe have tried, maybe haven't. But I mean, you're going to be getting yourself empowered with new techniques and tricks. So stay close. So this is what the second layer looks like on the bottom side after trimming off the bottom side. So it just goes over this one just like this. All right, and I'll be repeating the process that I had the first time, but this time around, another interesting thing I do is, because I don't like to waste my cakes so much, and because the problem I have is with this slippery feel that this part has, I don't necessarily have to trash it. What I do is to turn it all over the other side. So if I do it like this, it just simply means that I'm avoiding the slippery side. It goes to the surface part of the cake, and the dry part that is very typical with the cake after being trimmed is what you're going to have. So that's what we have here now. And then I'm going to repeat the process I had the first time. Add the whipped cream, go in the back and forth strokes as I'm doing. And note that you're not supposed to exert so much pressure into your cake. Now, these cakes that you see here have already been baked and pre-frozen, because for my dessert cakes especially, they have a way they taste really moist and decadent after they pop out from the freezer. Now, I've already done that behind camera, so I'm working with really cold cakes here. So if you notice that it has a firm texture structure, it's just because I've helped the structure by popping it into the freezer to help it to get a lot more stable and structured inside of the cake. So at this point, I'm going to be using another filling here. This time around, I'm going to be using my chocolate fudge filling. It's going in now. So you just do that. Just simply scrape it out. Yeah. So we have here. So you just simply spread this also, but you all know that this is a very thick fudge sauce, so it wouldn't spread just as much as the caramel option spread. So what I will now do is to still go ahead just like the first time to add up some crushed chocolates into it. So you all know that when you have all of this in your client's cake, you all know that you have to charge very rightly. I'll be making a video very shortly on how to price your cakes, or rather how to cost your cakes right, and how to make good profits in your cake. Yeah. So again, I go again with the second sandwich. For this particular layer, you cannot even do without sandwiching the second time, because the crushed filling is dry, because it's chocolate. So you just need to help the cake so that it can hold up together nicely. So this is what it looks like. This is where it gets interesting. At this point, the design I'm going to be teaching you all how to make is how to make a money cake. The kind of cake that you all can pull out the money from it, like a surprise for the celebrants. So when you're making a money cake, you can't just decide to make a money cake at the very end of your decorating. You must have had to, how do you say it? You'll have planned it that you are making it. So for this video now, this is the second layer. So before I add the third layer into this cake, I'm simply going to take this away, okay, to get more space to use, and then I would put the third layer on it and that's the chocolate cake. So what I am going to do now is to try and create an indentation for the money to go in, and this is basically going to come in, and then I will trim the cake after. This is exactly what I use to achieve my money cakes. Now, this is the cake I'm going to be using because it is usually the top cake that has the indentation in it. I'm going this way because this is where I'm going to need. So this right here, I don't even know the dimension, but I'm going to try to mark this. I'm marking this because I need it to be the same size as the cake. I need it to even be a little bit smaller, all right, than the cake, because whilst pulling out the money, you really don't want a situation whereby everything just flies out. So now, this is the size of the box, okay? So I'm going to cut this, right? I'm going to cut this all the way down. I'm going to cut this all the way down. That's the reason why you have to work with a cake that has good structure, or worst case, or better still, work with a cake that is well frozen. I mean, so that your cake doesn't crack or collapse whilst doing this. So I've cut this all the way to the bottom side. So I'm gonna see, can you see that? So I'm very aware that this is going to fit in all of the money I'm going to be using as a roll. So at this point, what I'm going to do is create the mark and then I'm trying to remove it as carefully as possible. Okay, this is the money that's going to go into this cake. So already behind camera, to save up some time, I already prepared this. So basically what I did was just to, this particular pack comes with this this film nylons. So all you need to do is insert the currency into it and then seal it up, and then just have your sellotape or glue gum or something to create a long thread like this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just try to roll this out in circular motion, because that is how it's going to come out when the client is ready to unveil their surprise. So I'm doing this very quickly, as quickly as possible. See, so I would then go ahead to add it into the money box. Okay, and the money box comes with a cover that already has the indented. So I'm not going to be putting everything in. So this is it. This is the cover that comes with it. So what I'm going to be doing is to pass this through, and then it looks just like this, and then I'm going to close it up very firmly to get the clicking sound. This is just to illustrate how it's going to come out, because I'm not going to be pulling it out when I'm done decorating the cake. So I'm just remaking it now, just because I had already shown you all how it's going to come out from the cake. I will be adding this, right, to close it up, so it helps it to stay in place, because at the point when I'm going to be adding the topper into it, it's going to be resting on this, as well as the message that is going to go, so that when you pull it out, it just goes like this out. So now at this point, I'm going to be going ahead to get this cake back into structure. Okay, remember this was what I cut out, so I'm just going to simply put this in, as you can see. We're trying to crumple the cake now. Okay, so I typically don't like crumpling the cake too thickly because of the fact that it's going to still have some final layer, but I'm doing it anyway. And after I'm done with this step, I'm going to be throwing this into the freezer for about 30 minutes so that it can firm up nicely. You can see how the money is seeping out. I put that in before I now try to arrange the cake layers. And at this point, I'm going to be working with the final coating when this is setting up, like 30 minutes, after which would finish up the cake nicely. So Just keep watching. Put a bit on top. At this point, I'm done completing the cake, and I'll be putting it into the freezer for about 30 minutes at the minimum. It can be longer depending on the intensity of your freezer. I mean, till it is firm enough to be able to take on the second cream coming in after. And I'll be back shortly. So it's been about 45 minutes since I kept the crumb coated cake in the freezer, and we're going to continue with the final coating now. Now take a look at how black the cream is now. I told you that at the time that I'm ready, it will give me that darker shade that I want. Now that said, it is very stable and ready to use. So first thing I'm going to be doing before covering the cake is to get started with the melting of the chocolate that I'm going to be using to drip around the sides of the cake. Okay, so for this particular cake, I'm going to be coloring this white compound chocolate in pink. All right, so how I'm going to do it is what I'm going to show you now. So I'm just going to be using my melting pot. Now if you don't have access to a melting pot, that's just fine. You can always use the double boiler style, which is simply by putting a smaller pot on the fire on with medium heat, and then placing a bigger aluminum plate, most preferably, over it, so that the water doesn't touch the bottom side of the pot. All it does is just the steam from the water would melt the chocolate, because white chocolate specifically is very tricky to melt, and if you don't get it right, you just end up with a clump of chocolate that would seize because of too much heat that is, you know, touching it. So what I'm going to be doing today is the same process, but this time around I'm using this melting pot. This is a 2-cavity melting pot. We have the 1 cavity as well, and this is sold in baking stores around. So I'm just going to preheat it, all right, by putting it on the second speed, because I want it to really melt fast. But by the time I'm done melting it, I can always reduce to the mark of 1, I mean, so that it would not burn. So what I'm doing now is to wait a bit whilst I'm working on the cake. So I will just give it an occasional, you know, mixing. And another advisable thing is for you to cut them into bits like this. I mean, so that the heat can seep into easily and it can melt faster than it will be if you add the blocks. Once I'm done melting it and it gets to the liquid state or the melted state, I'll be using my vegetable fat, also known as Crisco, a bit of it to thin it out. Once I do that, that's until then will I now add this ruby pink food color. Now it could be any color of your choice, but just know that you start a little so that you don't add up too much and need more chocolate to lighten the color. So I'm going to be using the ruby pink, so that's going to contrast nicely with the black color of the cream. So let's just go now. I didn't turn this on because it's empty, so I'm working only with this. It's already getting heated. Just a quick stop to check on the white chocolate, and it's melting nicely, so I can focus on this one now. So I would get my palette knife now, and every time I want to decorate a cake, what I always start with decorating is the surface, all right, the top cake. And then we go like this. Don't forget I said in the back and forth sweep, just as I am doing now. You all can see how stable this cream is, right? Aha. It's only a good whipped cream product that can give you this result. Okay. So I go in with the sides now. Same pattern. Just apply it, then spread it out. You apply it, and you spread it out. Apply. Just keep doing that till you go all the way around, and try to make sure that when you are covering your cake, try to be at an angle where you can see it clearly to make sure that it's evenly distributed, not like some parts are lower or some parts don't have enough cream, and then that makes you to keep combing the cream, and it could stand you at a risk of pulling out the cream at some point, and then you are back to square one, right? So once you want to know, one of the ways to know if a whipped cream is stable is from what it looks like when you are spreading around the sides of the cake. It's not supposed to have bubbles or air pockets. It's just supposed to glide over the cake smoothly and firmly. Once you have been working with cakes for a while, you'll be able to eyeball what is just going to be right to cover a cake. Now, this cake now, I'm most likely going to finish up this cream with no excess because I was able to eyeball it or just have a little bit extra. But one thing is sure, it's going to be enough, but isn't like it's not going to be enough. It's going to be enough, but I might have a little extra. But that's another thing you have to learn in the process of decorating cake. You all don't want to start covering a cake and then running helter-skelter trying to whip up extra, especially for a strong colored cake like this, a cake that the cream is prepared ahead of time to mature the color. You want to make sure that it's better for you to have too much to keep for later. I mean, if you have too much for later, you can easily use that. Maybe not necessarily to spread around the sides of the cake because it might have gotten under so much intense cold situation. You can most definitely use it to pipe on your cupcakes. And if it's a strong colored whipped cream like this, I wouldn't advise you to fill your cakes with it. All right, white would always do it for me for cake fillings, but you can always use it to apply texture. Yeah, good idea. Around the sides of your cake, like if you want to make a cake that has like a white and black, so you just use the white body, and then you can just use this one to use like a palette knife to tap around the sides of it before you then comb it all up together. So that gives you like a marbled effect. So next time you have a leftover whipped cream, don't be quick to trash it or feel like it's not useful. Everything is always useful as long as you can figure out how to work with it. So that's it. I might still add a little bit more, but at this point I'm first of all going to use my scraper now to try and make the sides smooth. If I see any bit of holes or gaps, then I would add up some more. So this cake is basically going to be black and gold. At this point, this is what is called a scraper. All right, comes in acrylic, comes in metal, but I'm using the stainless steel for today. So I'm just going to run it from the back like this. See there? All right, I'm checking on my chocolate, guys. We're almost done, but we're not done. Look at what it looks like, but it's not done yet, so we're working with that. So I'm scraping now. You can see it's taking shape, but we're not done yet. So since I've noticed that we have some spaces, I wouldn't keep scraping so that I don't keep pulling out the cream and making it tougher for me. So I'll just need to fill it up, all of those spaces that the scraper didn't quite cover. I'll just take more cream and then go over the sweeping one more time, or two more times, or as many times as I can go till I'm satisfied, bearing in mind that there's a thin line between overdoing this and doing it just right. Like if you keep on scraping and scraping, you stand the chance of sweeping off or sweeping out every cream on the cake, or you start seeing the inside part of the cake. So I told you all that I'm going to have next to nothing left, and that's it. So at this point, I'm just going to check for any other, okay, like here, and just go in with the cream to this point, and then that's it. At this point now, I'm trying to give it the final sweep. I bet a lot of people would think this is buttercream, but no, this is not buttercream. This is table whipped cream. Okay, so at this point, I'm sure a lot of you will think that I'm done, but no, I'm not done, because I can see a line here, and this is supposed to be the front part of the cake. So what I'm going to do now is give it one more sweep. I promise, just one more sweep, and then I perceive that we're done, because what is remaining now is just basically to drip around the sides of the cake. I'm actually tempted to not touch this cake because I love the fact that it is very neat. But because I already promised you all that I'm going to teach you texturing, so there we have it. We're going to be texturing this cake very quickly. At this point, I'm going to be teaching you all how to achieve sharp edges around the sides of your cake. You all can see what it looks like now. It has the uneven edges. So I'm going to be showing you how to get sharp edges, smooth edges out of this. It's going to be a little bit difficult with the money sticking out, but it's very possible. So you always, anything you're doing with your cake, always make sure to start from the back side of your cake. I mean, so that if there are any errors or any mistakes, as you can see that this part isn't as flawless as this part. So this part is going to serve as the front part. So what I am going to do now is to start combing from the back all the way around the circumference, and then I come back to the front again. So at this point, I'm just going to go in now. This is how we do it. You go with a single sweep like this, and you take out that excess. So that's, make sure you clean that off. See that? So you repeat this process all the way round till you get back to your starting point. So here, this is it. See that? So when you're working with sharp edges, you have to understand that you have to have the right control of your palette knife. Otherwise, you're going to end up pressing around the edges too much, and then you're going to be tempted to run around the sides of the cake again. And to avoid overworking the sides of your cake, like I've said repeatedly, just make sure that it's actually better for you to go more than once. Okay, like if you go around the first time and you feel like there's still some dents, then you go again, rather than just trying to clear everything like at the very first sweep. So once you do that, you stand the risk of getting your edges slopey rather than the sharp edges that we're actually about here. Okay, so I mean, at this point, if I was leaving the edges bare, I would most definitely go around it again to make sure I'm satisfied. But because I'm going to be dripping around the sides of the cake, and to save us some more time, you all have seen the process, all right? I'm going to go on with showing you how I drip around the cake using the pink color. I haven't colored the chocolate yet. That's what I'm going to be doing next. But whilst doing that, I don't have to worry about my cake or my cream melting off in the process of waiting on the chocolate, because it's a stable cream, and with a stable cream everything can be possible. Okay, so I think that I'm okay with this now. I initially wanted to give this a single sweep, but I actually forgot that I was going to texture it. So by the time I texture it now, I mean, this line that I'm particular about wouldn't show anymore. So what you're going to do basically is either you just get this moistened up. Let me use this one already. Remember that this cavity is empty. I'm just trying to improvise here. This cavity is empty. That's why I'm adding water. This doesn't have anything to do with my chocolate, guys. So I'm just going to tap briefly with a silicone brush like this. Shake off the excess water, and then you just go from the bottom side to achieve a brush strokes technique around your cake. That's it right there. So you just need to go in again with it, and then continue from where you stop up until you go right to the top of the cake. Make sure you don't press in too deeply, otherwise you stand the chance of poking the sides of your cake and it wouldn't be a neat result after all. Are you all following me? Yeah. So now this is just the texturing design that I chose to teach, all right? There are so many texturing designs that you can have on your cake to enhance the overall look of your cake. If you decide that you don't want to use a texturing tool or you know any other thing. You don't want to add up some stuff that you want to make do with what you have. So all you need to do is just get any tool, and this is where your creative thoughts come to play. On some of my cakes, I've actually used the imprint texturing, I've used the palette knife texturing, and I've also used the textured scraping combs as texturing, you know, tools. But today I'm showing you this because this brush is a staple in most bakeries, and so you can always get a hang on it. Just trying to work with what we have here. My white chocolate has been melted to the point where I need it to melt up until, because white chocolate is typically a chocolate variant that doesn't really melt till its running state, and if you keep stressing it out under heat, it's just going to start seizing. All right, so as long as it's like this, like a clump of white chocolate, is just fine to use. The only thing you're going to be using to enhance, or sorry, to help it to come to that running state would now be the white butter. Okay, so at this point now I'm going to be adding a bit of the white vegetable fat, a bit at a time. The heat trapped into the white chocolate is supposed to be enough, all right, to melt that fat. Once you see it be like this, then you know that your white chocolate got to the right heat temperature, all right, before you added before adding the white butter. Because what I do is try to get it a bit more heated than necessary, and then you know this is butter now. Once there's a heat reaction, it definitely would melt without having to return it into the pot. At this point, I'm going to be adding the ruby pink icing color. Okay, so now this color, just a drop or two of this will give me what I want. So I'm going to be adding this into this, a drop like this at a time. I just simply mix it all up together. See that? And because of the fact that I'm now adding something that isn't heated up, that is more like something cool, because the color is not heated up, okay, you stand the chance of getting it thickened like this. Now this is not a good dripping consistency. If you try to use it at this point, it's just going to have this really thick consistency that wouldn't drip out nicely on your cake. So I'm just going to add a little bit more. That's why I added a bit first to run it by, and then I'm adding the next bit now. After adding the color, your consistency for your drips is not supposed to be runny, overly runny, that will just run all the way to the bottom of your cake, because for some reason you might not even want your drip to get to the board. But if you add up too much Crisco at the very get-go, you're going to have that, and it's really very difficult to get a running chocolate back into a solid state. But when you're working with chocolate, you have to work fast. Remember, when you're working in a cool place, make sure that once you only take it out of the melting pot or from the double boiler pot when you are ready to use it. So as always, I always start from the back to make sure that, should in case I'm not satisfied with the drip pattern, I will just go back to it again. So now for this one, I'm going from the back, and then this is how I do it. I always enjoy using the spoons to drip my cake. This is what I do. Can you see that? And you go quietly. So if you have too much going on, it's not going to drip nicely. So now I'm going to go now like this. I just go in a single sweep, and then I add it like this. I go again. I'm basically going to follow this pattern up until the end. But guys, I am not going to drip all around the sides of the cake, really. So this is what I do basically. This is how to drip on the cake. Ensure to work fast, because remember that the cream is cold. So, and you know that once it's cold, as you are dripping around, it's going to start getting solid around the sides of the cake as it touches it. Like I said, this is just me showing you. I'm not covering all the entire cake with the drips, because that's not particularly the look that I want for this cake. So I'm stopping somewhere here at the front, and then I'll go ahead to add up some gold splashes to give it a little bit of a matured vibe that it needs. because the cake is not actually for a kid. But she loves pink, and she loves black, and then she loves gold. So we're looking for how to add everything with a perfect balance that will still make the cake look nice enough. All right. So this is what we have with the drips. I hope you all like what you're seeing. So after this, we're gonna go in with the gold splash design. Now, in doing this, you're going to be needing some bits of your edible gold dust. I don't have another, so something, just pour a bit of that, and also your edible spirit. I already poured that in here. Add it all up together and mix together. You're supposed to get a consistency that is not too watery but not too thick, otherwise it's not going to splash nicely on the cake as you want it to. So now what I'm going to do now is, this is what it is. I will just tap the brush lightly, start from the back as always, and just give it a quick stroke, more like I'm flogging the cake. So now you go like this, you go like this, it goes like this, and that already starts revealing the beautiful result we're gonna have. So I hope you all like. By the way, if you all are watching and you have watched up until this point, give me a thumbs up and let me know by commenting decorated cake in the comments, and make sure you watch till the very end. All right. Okay. So basically I go in with the top too, so that it can contrast nicely and not look left out. I'm just basically going to clean off the excess gold splashes with a damp clean towel, as you see. I mean, so that it's not all over the place. The body of the cake has splashes, so I'd rather keep the board simple. It's very okay to leave the splash anyway. It depends on the look you're trying to look out for, but for me, I'd rather keep it simple. As you see, I'm sure you can tell that it looks a lot better. Okay, so this is what the cake looks like at the moment. I'm going to be adorning the cake with just some gold balls and then the paper fan to give it the needed look, the finishing look I want it to have. So this is arranged in no particular order. You can go in like this. Always make sure to add up different sizes. You can go in here with some. Okay. And come here with another one. Basically, making use of your creativity. All right. When you're fixing it all in. All right. And then you can have another one here. Then we can have a small one here. Okay. And then let's not forget to add here. By the way, these are not edible, but these are decorative balls that are non-toxic, but they are not edible. They are made out of plastic and they're just for decorative purposes only. Okay, so I think that's about that for the cake. I will be adding this to just give it one last look that I will love it to have. So you have this, and then we have this. I also will be adding an additional ball to close this off nicely, like this. As you can see, you all can see. All right, and one last one. Yeah. And that's it. So the topper now, this is the topper now. So this is what we're doing now. I'm going to be attaching this here to make sure that it covers the money that has been sticking out with the sellotape at the back of it. So I just simply need to put a happy birthday like this, and then I'll just stamp on the sellotape to the back of the money. So that's what we have, guys. Okay, just one more thing. This is always a good idea. Just add it to give it a little more of an expensive look. Goes like this. And just however you want to have it. So that is going to be all for this amazing class. I hope you all, I really sincerely hope that you all enjoyed watching me decorate a cake from the scratch, and I hope that you learned 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever amount of techniques and tricks. Till next time, guys, I remain your favorite baker girl, Fimiesdessertsville. But don't forget to hit the subscribe button once you're done watching this video. Share with your family and friends so that we can continue to build a growing network under this channel. Number 2, and make sure to always like, and most importantly, drop your comments and reviews so that I can always give you feedback as soon as I can, and always let me know the kind of content you would like me to shoot in subsequent videos. I remain your favorite baker girl one more time, Fimiesdessertsville.